Okay, so I know this is probably a pretty big topic that actually I don't think anyone's really made a video like this. I just haven't seen any lately about which country in Warthunder's whoops is actually the best. I mean, there's quite a few good ones, quite a good couple major ones, couple good minor ones. You also have the down end ones and whatnot, but just you don't see this too often. So we're gonna do it here. So we're gonna start off with the U.S. here. So we're of course just looking at ground. Um, Ground-wise, I mean, they're pretty well balanced. Their low tier is decent. It's not awful. It's not overly difficult to get through. I mean, right around like the 4.0 range does get a bit difficult. In general, it's not bad. Their mid tier is pretty good, and their top tier, it's pretty average. I'm not gonna say they're like some super stellar country. They don't really have anything that's like super OP. HSTVLs are annoying. The Abrams are good. They have decent over-round armor. They just have main problem, of course, is being the no commander sight and the NATO hump, which isn't just specific to them. Other countries do have that issue as well, except for the commander site, which is nice to have, especially if you start doing like sim and stuff. So that they don't have that kind of sucks. Hull armor kind of sucks for the Abrams. Turret armor is pretty decent though. So in general, they're a pretty average country. So I'm gonna have to say B. Yeah. No, they're middle of the line. They're good, but they're not like super stellar. They don't have any like super OP vehicles in their lineups, at least at top tier sort of thing. Moving on to Germany. Germany is a really strong early tier. Mid tier is a bit of a struggle if when you're not used to it, kind of figuring out how to play it's the Tiger Shoes and whatnot at like 7.0 and 7.7. When you get those up tiers, it can be a bit difficult, but it's not impossible. Mid tier, going into the Cold War stuff, all the Cold War stuff is pretty solid. Martyrs are good, Leopard 1s are good, their entire Leopard series is fantastic. AAs, the Gepards and all that, excellent tank destroyers too. Their top tier, all their Leopards from the 2A4 to the 2A7, including the PSO, all super solid. So they have the issue with the NATO hump. They have issue with not being able to turn their turret and get depression on either side of them, which is, in my opinion, broken, but whatever. I would argue that they're probably slightly better than the US. Their AAs seem to be better, at least like when you compare to like the Gepard versus the Lavad. Their multi-role capabilities, the Gepard, from what I can tell and what I can see, is a far better tank destroyer than Lavad. Of course, that's not what they're designed for, but in general, multi-role wise, the Gepard does end up being better. In general, the Leopard lineup is super solid, super easy to play, super easy to figure out. So I'm gonna have to put them up to here. Russia. Russia. Low tier, pretty solid. Nothing too spectacular. T-34s kick butt if you know what you're doing, if you know how to angle them properly. Middle of the tier, you kind of get into the T-54s, T-55s, BTRs, ZSUs. ZSUs are pretty good AAs. Yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of T-54s and whatnot. Once you get to the T-55s and T-62s, they definitely do improve and whatnot. But overall, they're kind of middle of the line as well. Their top tier, it's good, but they're difficult to learn. If you're not used to not having no depression, and you're not used to that sort of slower, sluggish gameplay they have, okay, that's a bit of a lie. They're fast, but they have a shit reverse gear. No, their reverse gear is non-existent. But they have great armor, probably the only country that has super reliable armor. But it only means that everyone gets really used to shooting your weak spots. So it kind of evens out there. Typically get really good ammo. You get really good HE rounds. You get really good ATGMs from the barrels. You have really solid IFVs. Their BMP3s, BMP4s, 2S38, BMP2s, even the BMP1. All of those IFVs and whatnot are super solid. AAs are super solid too. The Tunguska, the Schalke, the BUK. A BUK, I don't know how good that one is, but I do know it does do a pretty decent job as an A. Other A's are pretty good. They work really well as multi-role as well, except for the Schalke. Schalke does pretty much only really good at anti-light tank and anti-aircraft capabilities, but I would have to put them at A. Britain. Britain's a weird one. They're basically exclusively solid shot. Low tiers, pretty decent. You've got a good mix of armor with decent guns. They're all decently slow vehicles. At least in reverse, there are quite a few heavy infantry focused vehicles that's supposed to be moving with infantry, so they do have a slower forward speed, such as the Churchills and the Matilda, the Valentines. All those are a bit slower, but that's okay. Some super solid light vehicles in there, such as the Sarks. Mid tier, you got the Sense. As long as it's not the Scent one, I think they're pretty solid. I'm not just a big fan of the Scent one. Getting into the FEs and whatnot, you got the FE-405, you got some really good artillery pieces in there, some really good heavy hitters. You got the Chieftains that are super sluggish, but if you get used to that gameplay of kind of just taking things as it goes, kind of being really observant of your surroundings and whatnot, it's super strong. You can do super good with the Chieftains. They're top tier, once again, super sluggish, but they are really tough MBTs. They have some really good armor on them on the turret and the hull. And there's a bonus that not very many people plays them. So you kind of have that bonus of people not knowing really where to shoot you. You get a couple more extra seconds in there. They have good ammo for their MBTs, their Charlies and whatnot. Their AAs is bit more lackluster. They don't really have anything that's super OP at their top tier lineup area. All I do get is a bunch of really good ones, like the Falcon and whatnot, that do absolute shred light tanks and whatnot. So for them, I'm gonna have to put them at C just because they're not gonna outclass anything necessarily. Like all the other countries can outrun the British tanks easily. So they're gonna be a C tier here. Japan, sluggish low tier. Their ammo isn't that great. They're kind of lackluster with their APHE. They don't really get a lot of penetration with it. When they do pen, they typically do really well. Mid tier is just a lot of copy paste. You get into more domestically made vehicles though. Get the STBs and whatnot, and the Type 6, not Type 16, but is it Type 10, Type 16? There's a type in there. I don't remember what the hell the type is called. It's not either of those. But mid tier's pretty decent. I'm not gonna it's not spectacular. It's kind of the same as what it's gonna be like playing Japanese mid tier, not Japanese, German mid tier. But going down to their top tier, they have some solid AAs. They have some really fast ones in there. They have Gepard copy, so they are pretty decent at their multi-role with their AAs there. Their MBTs are incredible. Now they do still have the same depression issue as the Leopards, but almost all of their top tier MBTs have super fast reloads, which make them excellent, excellent vehicles. Now they are also really fast. They're quite maneuverable vehicles as well, probably the same as a Leopard 2, if I remember correctly. Their armor, like for the Type 90s, are about going to be along the same lines as the Leopard 2 as well. But once you get into the Type 10s and whatnot, the armor does improve. Probably closer to of a 2A5, probably a bit less though. But they don't really need the armor because they have such an insanely good reload that they can just almost outgun everything they face, and they still get that good penetrating capabilities that you see in the other MBTs. So I'm going to put them at an A because they kind of just level out. Italy. Italy's low tier is really lackluster. I find it's underpenning and underwhelming. But as soon as you get into the mid tier, you start to get all their little rat vehicles, the Fiats, the Obels, you got the R3 and whatnot. All of those is what makes Italy good. They're just a little rat country with a bunch of really good stuff there. They get M60s, Leopards, and they have their OF40s around there as well, which are all really good because you see those in the US and Germany, and they all perform well there, and they don't perform any differently, other than I do believe the M47 has a different gun in their tree, which just makes it better. Probably the best M47 in the game because they actually get Sabo. Their top tier is lackluster. They're low armor. Their penetrating's decent, but it's low armor. Regular reload speed, so it's like 6 to 7 seconds per round sort of thing. It might be a bit faster, might be a bit slower. I'm not 100% sure on it, but there's a lackluster top tier. They have some couple good stuff in there. Not recently, they have a 2A7, they have the Lynx, I believe is what it's called, and they have of course, their Arietis and the Centauros and whatnot, but in my opinion, it's just super lackluster for what you get out of it. So they're going to be another C tier. China, low tier and mid tier, it's almost all copy paste, but they're all good copy paste. You got Stewarts, you got Chaffees, you got Shermans, you got D3485s, you got D3476s with the hexagonal turret. It's a well-rounded low tier. You get a little bit of everything for everyone else, and it works well. Mid-tier, you start to see more of their domestic stuff. You get some PTs in there. You get some domestic AAs. You get the IS-2s. You get into the Type 69 and the Type 59. Both are pretty decent. Type 69 I personally like a lot. Type 59 is just a domestic T55 basically, and the Type 69 is just the upgrade copy of that. Going to their top tier, they have, I would say, super solid top tier. I would argue that they're a pretty good mix of both, Western and sort of Soviet engineering sort of thing. You got the sort of Soviet design of not much depression as much as you would like, with a decent amount of armor on it, decent turret armor, decent hull armor, though it's not going to be as effective as the Soviets, as the Russians, just because it's not focused on that. It doesn't have that same profile. So you still have the Western weaknesses, like you're going to be able to be shot to the side easily. You don't have any relic or anything like that. You're going to be able to easily be lower penned through your lower plate or through your front plate, depending on which one you're playing. The turret's easy to pen through the front if you know where to hit. There are some spots in there which are a little bit more difficult. They have massive breaches like the Russians, and unlike the Russians, they actually have a reverse speed and a really good forward speed. And overall, their AA's pretty decent. They got a new one. From what I can tell, it's basically just like a lab ad, and it still has pretty decent anti-tank and anti-air capability. And they also have some really good multi-role ones in there as well. So I'm gonna have to say that they're a B tier. They're not like super excelling in anything, but they're not on the down end. Moving on to France, they have kind of a sad low tier. You're gonna typically be overpenning and whatnot. You're not gonna have anything that's gonna be like super, super good against everything sort of thing. You're gonna basically, it's like Britain when you first start out with France. Mid tier, you start to get their domestic stuff. You get the SA-50s. You get the ARL 44. You get, you start getting some decent stuff in there. You got some good heavy hitters in there, which you can actually use to actually be an effective teammate at that point. Moving down into their lower mid tier, you got they got all their AMXs, their AMX 50, AMX 40, the Lorraine 40Ts, and all those. All are super solid. Osking turrets make them super difficult to kill from the turret. Great reloads, great accuracy. All overall just solid vehicles there. You get down to their top tier, you have the Leclercs, which are kind of the same. Well, they're in a better boat than the British Charlies, but they're in the same boat because not many people play them. So you have the advantage of people not really knowing how to kill you, and then you can use that as an advantage to kind of get a little bit more time to place your shots while they're still trying to figure out how to kill you. They have great armor, great speed, great gun. There's overall a super solid country for basically their entire tree, except for the low tier. Low tier is where they kind of suffer a bit. So they're going to be an A tier here. Now we have Sweden. Sweden's a weird one. All their stuff basically domestic. It's all pretty good. All their low tier stuff overpenning. Everything. Everything overpens basically because the homes exclusively use Sabo. So in that sense, they're kind of the same boat as Britain, where they're just constantly solid shot rounds. But on the bright side, you're not going to have much issues killing stuff. everything you see is almost always going to die to you because you almost always have the penetration to deal with what you're facing. That is until you get to more of the mid tier. There you start having a bit more issues because then you start having to fight the heavier vehicles, but they still have vehicles which can go against those. Say some really solid anti-tanks, the IKV 103 being one of those. The one with the EFS, that one there, you can bring it up to basically any PR and it's going to be perfectly fine, even though it's at 4.0. Moving up, they have their Scent, SGRV 81, SGRV 101, both really solid. They have some really good rat vehicles, the USH 405, and the other USH, I don't remember what the hell it's called, the PBV. Those are really good. Their AAs are really solid, and both roles because they're all 40 mils. They're really good at anti-tank and anti-air capabilities. Moving up to their top tier, super solid top tier. It's just like the Germans, except it's better. All of those Leopards have a solid hull, not solid. They have a really good hull with a similar, actually exact same turret armor, but the armor on the hulls their 2A5s, and I think it's just 2A5s for them basically. Then you of course you have the 2A6 for the finished portion, but we're not gonna talk about that because it doesn't matter as much. Although it is there, it is really good, but it doesn't have the upgraded hull because these leopards have the best hull out of all leopards in the game. Unless Peel might have a similar style, but they're super strong hull for the leopards. It's not invulnerable. You're still gonna get killed through it pretty consistently, but it's better. That's what counts. It is better. Ammo's still the same. You're still gonna not the same. They have their own domestic round, but it does still about the same amount of penetrating capabilities as the 2A5, give or take. But they're still super capable. Still have the same weaknesses that other leopards have, not being able to look side to side low. Super frustrating, but it is what it is. Their IFEs there, super solid. All of them really good. You can use DAs as IFEs as well. Yeah. So for them, A. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Moving to Israel, they don't really have a low tier. They just get straight into mid and top tier. Mid tier, I mean, it's just a slew of M60s and M48s, which kind of sucks. Though you get a couple T54s in there, and I think one might be T55 hull technically, but whatever, they're both T54s, doesn't matter, they're basically identical. Both those are super good. All the M48s, M60s are pretty solid. They're just like what you get in any other M60 or M48, except they have typically more machine guns, and they are absolutely covered in ERA. Moving up to their top tier, they're decently solid. I mean, they're all Markavas. You have the downside of the turret being placed in the back of the hull. So it's a little finicky trying to learn and how to get used to that playstyle. Once you get used to it, they can be super survivable and super effective until you start moving into top tier. Because for the most part, all the Merkavas have a very similar armor layout and armor values, even once you get to the more modern ones. So you're still going to be dying the same way. So, I mean, they're all basically the same after you get the 1 and 2. You just get better guns, better ammo, basically. Bit more survivability as you go up, but not by a whole lot. Their AAs are a bit lacking and are a bit disappointing. Their last gun AA is literally an M163, the McBat, and then it goes all missiles. So it's a little disappointing you don't get any sort of super good AA like that, like the Gepard or anything like that. But you do get their two IFEs, the Namer and the other one I can't remember the name of. Both those are super solid as IFEs. They both get spikes. Both can be super effective if you use them correctly. And yeah, but because they're kind of mediocre, I'm gonna have to put them. Hmm. I mean, the M60s are decently solid, but it's only M60s. Yeah, yeah. I feel like that's a pretty solid layout for rating all of the countries in Warthunder. There's none that are actually like super OP. There is no such thing as like an overly OP country or a nation in War Thunder. They're all, for the most part, pretty average. There's none that is going to completely outshine another one because all of them has different attributes and different quirks to them that makes them unique and good in their own way. But there's also no absolutely garbage country. There's none where it's completely unplayable. Yes, there might be areas where you're gonna struggle more, or it's gonna be a bit more difficult to try and learn the vehicles, but there's none that are absolutely terrible and unplayable. And that's it. That's my little rant. Hope you enjoyed.